Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting of the Administration Committee of the Agribusiness Development Corporation. I'm Committee Chair David Hinazumi. Prior to calling the meeting to order, Ingrid Hisatake will explain how the public can participate in this hybrid meeting, which can be accessed by video conference, telephone, or in person.
Thank you, Chair Hinazumi. For all of you joining us online, your microphone will automatically be muted. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may click the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen to indicate that you wish to testify about that agenda item. The chairperson will individually enable each testifier to unmute their microphone. When recognized by the chairperson, please unmute your microphone before speaking and mute your microphone after you have finished speaking. For those of you joining us by phone, when the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may indicate you want to testify by entering star and then 9. A voice prompt will let you know that the host of the meeting has been notified. When recognized by the chairperson, you may unmute yourself by pressing star and then 6 on your phone. A voice prompt will let you know that you are unmuted. Once you are finished speaking, please enter star and then 6 again to mute yourself. For both internet and phone, as well as in-person access when testifying, you will be asked to identify yourself and organization, if any, that you represent. Kindly reminder, each testifier will be limited to 2 minutes of testimony per agenda item. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. This meeting is called to order at 1:38 p.m. on Friday, November 21st, 2025. I will take a roll call of the committee members present. When your name is called, please verbally acknowledge your presence and state who, if anyone over the age of 18 is present in the room with you. This also serves as a roll call vote. For each subsequent vote, I will ask if there are any objections or abstentions. If there are none, then the motion will be approved on the same basis as this initial roll call. Committee member Jason Watts.
Present and alone.
Committee member Dane Wicker.
Present alone.
Okay. And myself, David Hinazumi, present and alone. Confirming that we have all members of the committee present, so we have a quorum for this meeting. Members are reminded to have their cameras turned on and remain on screen during the meeting, especially during the vote, so the record will clearly reflect who was present at the time the vote was taken. Moving to agenda item B1, minutes from the October 1st, 2025 Administration Committee. This item will need to be deferred to our following meeting as we do not have the minutes yet. Is there anyone from the public who would like to testify about this agenda item?
There's none, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda action items C1. Establish goals and objectives of the committee, deferred from October 1st, 2025. Is there any member of the public who would like to testify on this agenda item?
There is none, Chair.
Okay, with that, I will open it up for discussion amongst committee members. Okay, my take on this as far as goals and objectives of the committee, it is stated in the in our bylaws for the agency to review contractual matters, personnel matters. We will continue to do that. In addition, we want to be able to use this as a means to review our financial statements, budget items, and again, contracts and legislative appropriations to make sure we are having appropriate status meetings and making sure that all of these projects are moving along. Okay. If there's no further discussion, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item C2, setting fiscal year 2027 goals and objectives for the executive director, including establishing a mid-fiscal year and end-of-year evaluation schedule, deferred from October 1st, 2025. Is there any member of the public who would wish to testify on this agenda item?
There is none, Chair.
Okay, with that, I will open it up for discussion amongst the committee members.
Chair.
Yes, Committee Member Watts.
So I'm just trying to wrap my head around the question. So sorry, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Were you gonna set goals, or did you want to just
Well, yeah, this will probably wrap into the following agenda item where we start talking about or for one, getting updates on fiscal year 2027 and our future planning for this. So maybe as we get to the next agenda item, we can start to dive into this a little further after we hear from staff.
sounds good, thank you.
Okay, but on this agenda item, we still need to discuss mid-fiscal year and end-of-year evaluation schedule.
Chair,
Yes, Committee Member Wicker.
sorry, I had my mic on mute. We were just on, are we still on C2 or were we just on C2?
We're still on C2.
Oh, okay. So, are we looking at kind of revisiting what some of the deliverables were? And then kind of doing a temperature check, adjusting, using that as guidance to move forward? What were your thoughts on?
Yes, that would be appropriate. There was a permitted interaction group
Right.
that was created, spent a good amount of time to go through evaluations and setting goals and objectives and deliverables. And that it's already been presented, I believe, at either the June or July meeting. So yes, I envision us working off of that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so if committee members have a suggestion for which meeting we should set the mid-fiscal year evaluation.
Well, I guess February would be a month after the 6-month period, right?
Mhm. If we do it with just conversational, if we're looking to do a midterm or mid-year eval, a pig would be established, or would that be, would it be a pig to do or would this committee be doing the eval?
I think we can go either way. I think it's appropriate for the administration committee, or yeah, a pig could be could be created.
Okay. So we would look at maybe this come end of this year, calendar year, that would actually be the 6th year of the fiscal year.
Yes.
Have it on, consider to whatever body would do that, have that agendaed on the January meeting to establish that group to do the mid-year eval. And then they can look back at the pig that did this report as a lot of the guidance on what those deliverables or metrics were.
Okay. That yeah, that would work well. I don't believe we need any kind of formal motion for this except to just state that exactly as you mentioned, Committee Member Wicker, clearly established a group that will conduct the mid-fiscal year evaluation at our January meeting and have that reported on at the February 2026 committee meeting.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Is there any discussion from staff, in particular Executive Director Gady on this schedule?
I think I would like to just understand, is there going to be a PIG created at the January board meeting, or is the committee doing, I'm a little lost on the procedure you're following and what kind of a format that you wanted to follow.
What
Those are two options that we put out there. I don't think a decision was made on that yet.
Yeah, that's correct. But by the January 2026 meeting, we will clearly establish whether it's going to be this committee or a PIG
Okay.
that will complete it.
I would welcome a discussion about the goals and objectives for fiscal year 26 and current status and any adjustments that the committee would like to make.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item C3, review fiscal year 2025 budget and actuals, status update regarding fiscal year 2026 budget, update on active contracts and projects, ADC budget planning for the 2028 fiscal year, committee to determine milestones to provide the ADC Board of Directors a report and recommendation for the ADC's 2026, 2027, and 2028 fiscal year budget matters. I know there's quite a bit within this agenda item, so as we ask for public testimony and do our discussion, we can work on one item at a time. So first of all, is there any member of the public who would wish to testify?
There is none, Chair.
Okay, so again, maybe we take the first part of it, review fiscal year 2025 budget and actuals. Is there any staff presentation on this?
Chair, if you don't mind, maybe we could all refer to item C3. And I think as we're doing that, I just wanted to revisit what how our fiscal calendar generally works is, and this is more for public knowledge. Between January and May is the legislative session in which bills and budgets are discussed. And then in June, the governor reviews what budget was approved by the legislature and either approves or line items out of the budget. And then July 1st is when the fiscal year starts. Our fiscal year runs July 1 until June 30th. And generally speaking, by August 31st, a budget draft is due to DBED as an attached agency. And, Deputy Director Wicker, if there's anything else that you think it's imperative that people understand about the process and how it works, I would welcome any input. I don't mean to take away from your knowledge level because you're certainly more knowledgeable than I am in that area.
I got cut out there. Was that on the timeline or the kind of the cadence
How about the cadence?
for the budget process?
Yes.
So departments working with their programs put together the budget, which is usually due at some point to the admin, budget and finance, sometime in September. So from basically come sine die all the way up until August 31st of any year is usually the window of when the department and its programs are piecing together their budgets and fine tuning it. So internally we set, okay, by August 31st, have it done. That way It's ready to go once we receive the request from Department of Budget and Finance. Now, for ADC and the board, given the presentation, given the time to put feedback in, response, that has to be baked in those 3 months, 4 months. So if the board is going to ask for presentation, assuming they want to see it a second time after revisions to do a final, if the bylaws say that they have to approve it, that all has to be worked out between the ED and the chair of when to make the deadline to submit it to DBED. Now, DBED's also going to take a look at it as it falls under statute. What changes, what additions, what revisions will be made before it finally goes off to BNF. So it's also key that aligns with the program strategic plan.
I would agree with that. Thank you, Deputy Director. You know, I don't think we've ever talked about not following those policies. I think we've always talked about, you know, the corporation needs to adjust to whatever that set timeline, budget timeline is, to make sure we're not late for that, to meet DBED's internals, the governor's internals, legislative internals, et cetera. I think that for me, the question is, I guess, what has the ADC staff been doing in previous years? And I don't remember as a board member voting on budgets.
Yeah. My time here at DBED, not seeing any budget come up for board approval. Can't speak to what's happened in the past as I was not on the board here at DBED.
So I guess, Wendy, would you be able to walk us through that? You know, like 2023, since you've been ED, you know, 2023, 2024, 2025.
So the new fiscal year would have started July 1st. I was hired at the end of August in 2023. And so at that point, there was no presentation to the board prior to me starting, nor shortly after me starting in 23 to the board in terms of how, you know, what the budget looked like. And, you know, getting approval from the board. And that would have been the second year of biennium. And that's another component more for public than anyone else. You know, the budget cycles tend to run in kind of like 2 years, with the first year of biennium being fiscal year 26 and second year of biennium being fiscal year 27. Generally speaking, you know, the larger asks are in the first year, less of an ask is made in the second year. If you're asking if the board had approved any budget in fiscal year, it would have been 24 or fiscal year 25, the answer is no, they have not. But what I can add is I started in August. We hired an accountant 5 in October and have really spent the last year and a half to 2 years doing reconciliation and making sure that our systems internally, in our move from the Department of Ag over to being attached to DBED, the codes are completely different. And so putting together a process and reconciling what we had for information has been what's been happening over the last year and a half. And, you know, in August, we did prepare, and I'm more than happy to share with the admin committee a list of items to go to DBED for potential fiscal year supplemental CIP and fiscal year supplemental operating. One of the other things I'm wondering about from a cadence perspective is typically the board will vote on officers in June, which means in July, the new board chair would select their committees in terms of like admin committee. And so I'm just asking from a process standpoint, how we could maybe work this a little bit better.
Well, Chair, sorry, if you don't mind, I can continue.
Yes.
I think, Wendy, I think, well, what I'm looking at is, I think, so, the board is, of course, the non-paid volunteer portion of the component, and the corporation staff is the full-time, everyday operation of it. And the bylaws, state clearly, right, quote, "The executive director shall submit the annual corporation budget to the chairperson for the consideration of the board of directors." That's the policy. And so I'm just, regardless of what the board is going through, any kind of flux or change, the staff or you and your staff should always be putting that budget together regardless of who is on the board. And so whoever becomes the chair or whatever happens in that change, a document's already prepared to be handed off to anybody. Because at some point I could drop dead, anybody could, so at some point I think any board member needs to be prepared to take that mantle. And that's where the staff continuity is important, regardless of what's happening with the board. You are always working on a budget. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out, like, so since you've started, I've never seen a budget. And regardless of where we are in the biennium, right, it's still, every year is still a budget year. So every year the board should be voting on something.
So I would agree with you. I'm not gonna deny that since I've been on board, there has not been a budget that was given to the board in order for the board to vote on. I did prepare a budget in like November of 23 that was shared with the board. But even that was based on an accountant being in the position less than a month.
Okay, so with with this discussion and kind of circling back to the cadence, what I would suggest is, knowing that the deadline is end of August, that if we can get the initial budget at the June meeting, admin committee, it can come to admin committee first. We can work through it, or at least try to flush it out a little, and then it can go to the main board by the full board by that same June meeting as well, because that'll just be the initial look. There hasn't been, of course, we do recognize, there's a lot of work that staff needs to put in to complete it. So if we can get it by June, that would give us, 2 months, so we could have time to digest it, provide feedback by the July meeting, and then revisions could come back to us by August, and then get a final decision. And sorry, when I say us, it can be a combination of both the admin committee as well as the full board. Then that should safely get us to a final budget by the end of by the end of August. Any discussion on this?
A cadence sounds good. I mean, I would even think if you do the admin meeting June, because the admin committee would meet before the regular board meeting. As you said, then first draft feedback. In July board meeting, that should include the changes incorporated. Then you hold August board meeting if need. Is my concern would be if we do August, we are usually the third Thursday of the month, so you're basically a week out from the kind of the internal deadline.
Got it.
Still needs DBED to review with the director.
Okay, so to be safe, should we start this process in May?
You said you could go right off, yeah, it's then
Or is it
technically you would want to watch the, because you also got to be, well, you could start in May and then you could revise as needed once that current, sorry, you could start it in May and then you could revise as needed depending on what the final budget bill comes out of the governor's office, right? Because the governor, he has a set time to when he has to sign the bill, including if he makes any vetoes. So if something that was provided in the legislative budget that session is vetoed out and it's critical, then we can just fold it back in and ask again that coming year. So it's not just a straightforward. There are all these things that we have to account for in this short window. But for the most part, that's why it goes back to that strategic plan is using your guiding document and whatever key deliverables you need to do, and if those resources needed, whether it's fiscal or policy, within those 2 months following signing die at the end of session, you'll know what you're able to move forward with, and then maybe what you're stuck at because you didn't get the resource. And then, okay, what's the strategy? Do we still need that as part of the strategic plan? Or does that part come to a pause and then we have to go back in and ask for that resource again? But that'll work. I mean, the flow is there.
Okay, any further discussion on this?
Mhm.
You know, Executive Director Gady, this is you just heard what Committee Member Wicker stated. It's you and staff that are putting this together. So if we targeted May, is that
I
is
think
that
that's
doable?
achievable, but I think that Chair Watts has had his hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry,
Um,
Committee Member Watts.
I just had to kind of give Wendy an example of this. This is the same thing that happens in the government side. They elect inside the governor, even the president of the United States, right? Uh, the outgoing president gets to create the budget for the incoming president, right? So the process never stops. And so the incoming person usually gets sworn in just about the time their budget's coming due, actually. So they don't have very much time to create a budget. So that's where I'm trying to say your staff work and what I think Board Member Wicker's alluding to about the strategic plan. You kind of already know the direction for majority of the agency. And now as the CEO of the agency, you're keeping that flow moving forward. So you kind of know, some board members may have some additional ideas or projects or whatever, but you kind of, for the most basic part, know what needs to happen to go forward, especially amongst your staffing, et cetera, right? So, uh, I think there's that continuity is there where you keep moving forward, new board gets put in, sworn in, whatever, and then you're presenting to the board, the current status of your budget document. And then they're free to make whatever changes they want or leave it alone, et cetera. But that kind of planning never really stops. And I would agree, Chair, with the May starting point. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for discussion. So yes, on this matter, I don't believe we need any type of motion, but let's set that as a cadence that come the May meeting, staff will present to admin committee as well as the full board a copy of the of the budget. And then that will give us 2 full meetings, the June and July meetings, to flush everything out, and then we'll go from there.
That sounds very achievable.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I know we kind of jumped ahead, and that was a very important matter to get the cadence set and make sure the board is going to see the budget. Now, getting back to fiscal year 2025 budget and actuals, which were in the board materials. Any report from staff on this?
So I think it's appropriate to kind of step back a little bit and look at on the submittal on page 2, it kind of starts to break down the revenues a little bit deeper. And, a couple of things that I would want to know if I was sitting in your shoes is, what is that big variance on the first line with Cape Kaha? And that's because Hartung lost a contract and asked for some rent relief. And so that's the big reason why there's such a huge variance in that revenue number. In the case of the Navy 2468, we had billed, but the way the state works is we don't recognize the revenue until the revenue comes in. So just billing didn't allow it to hit the actual, but the variance will show as being received in fiscal year 26. In the case of one of the other things I wanted to point out is there's a line item for the Tamora warehouse. And if admin committee has no objections, I'd like to change how things are annotated in here, because the Tamora warehouse is now the Leeward Community College Value Add Product Center. And so first of all, that revenue number will go away because the facility is under license to LCC for $1 a year. But I think we're due to have, if you're not opposed, staff can redo the labeling for the revenues so that it makes sense. Maybe by county, and then a little bit more specific, like removing the Tamora warehouse, and we would put in that it's the Leeward Community College, and at some point there might be a revenue item for the regional kitchen. So things are a little bit more specific, and they are also specific to the location for those things. One of the other things that I think is important for the board to know is on page 46, which is 3 of 3, and that is the Waihole water system. There is a government obligation bond repayment, and that runs, we've been paying on that since 1994. The original bond was for $4 million. By the time we are done paying, it will be a little bit over $9 million. And we are due to pay that off in I'm going to just check, I think it's 2035. Literally, I think it's April 1st of 2035. But if we were not paying on the bond repayment, that money would go directly into CIP repairs. And so this past year, that was one of the things that we requested from the ledge. So it is April 1st, 2035 will be our last payment. And the total will have been paid of $9.698 million. We have not ever missed a payment. And all of that is paid by the farmers who are receiving the distribution of water from the Waihole system. And I don't want to keep talking. If there are specific items that you would like to ask about, please feel free to ask.
To that bond repayment for Waihole, though, it's not as, you explained it clear, but the mechanism is not as simple. The state goes out in tranches to sell general obligation bonds, and in doing that, gets a lump sum, then comes back and then finances projects. That tranche is amortized out. So you cannot just take out a specific project because on paper and mathematically it says, oh, we paid it out. The vehicle or option moving forward is to use a revenue bond then, because then you would be true to the bond repayment and pay it off to its true value.
Thank you.
BNF is open to figuring out how to extract it out. I mean, that would be beneficial, but I don't think they've done that.
That's a key point. In terms of like categories for the expenditures, we can do a little bit deeper dive, but one of the things that has traditionally not been a line item is having, a budget number specifically for travel for the board. or for professional development for the staff. That's just not something that's been included in the past, that I'd like to see if we could possibly include that in the future. One of the other things that I would like you to consider, because I'm going to try and work that in, is the possibility of having a board secretary. I just wanted to say that between August, September, October, and November, with the traveling for the board members and for the staff, that is basically 52 travel. It's called TAFs, but it's 52 travel reports. So it's 52 sets of plane tickets or travel, as well as, filling things out on the back end. So I just wanted to kind of point that out to the group as a whole. And do you have other questions on the budget itself? I'm going to go back to the chair.
I'll open it up. I'll open it up if there's any committee members that have any specific questions.
Oh, Chair.
Yes, Committee Member Watts.
On the budget, Wendy, where is PMRF?
EMRF is what is called the line item of Navy 2468. That is PMRF. And for other people, that's the Pacific Missile Range Facility. And that is a contract for operating and maintaining those pumps, of
And,
which we currently do not have a contract.
but they owe us money though.
Yes, but the money that we have collected is going to be reported in fiscal year 26.
We've collected money at all?
Yes, we have.
What are the dates of those collections?
I can send you a spreadsheet.
Because the last document I saw, the Navy hasn't paid any bills.
Mark, do you have the spreadsheet in front of you in terms of the payments that have been made? It's deposited via an ACH transfer into a bank account. And there are two sets of payments. One would have been for about 6 months worth of invoicing, and then sorry, Mark.
Sorry, can you hear me? I'm having a little
Yep.
bit of trouble with my camera. Apologies. I can't quite get it to work. But yes, Chair. Chair Watts. We did receive the funding. I think what had happened was they were waiting for the NPDES permit to be completed, and that was delivered, I'm going to say around, it was either end of October or September. I'm sorry, I can't remember the date. And then they paid shortly after that. They released payment right after we delivered to them the NPDES permit.
Mark, is because the last bunch of invoices I saw from like 2023, none of those were paid. And there were invoices that went from 2023, 2024. I mean, I just, and all of a sudden, so now they're all clear.
Yeah. So the invoicing was submitted, and they, as part of the agreement, is we owed them the NPDES permit.
What do you mean the permit? So
Part of the agreement with was to seek the NPDES permit.
A condition
And
of the contract.
Yeah, condition of the contract.
so all the invoices that you folks sent me in the last 6 months that showed all these outstanding invoices from 2023, 2022 are paid.
Yes, we're up to date.
Okay, so can we send me an update, or send the board an update on all of those outstanding invoices that shows they were cleared?
Okay, we'll do that.
And then it's not gonna show up until 2026, as you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah, we received it. So I apologize. I don't have the actual date. When we received the NPDES permit, we sent it to the Navy, and they said okay, and then they released payment. And it came several weeks after.
Okay.
And yet I don't receive, so it probably came around September. So I think we got the permit in October, and I think we got the payment in September. I will send you the. We will
We'll get
send
the
you a.
exact
Yeah,
dates and
we
we'll send it.
the dates. Yeah.
Well, no, because I think last time I was told it was because of the government shutdowns. I guess I'm trying to figure out. So
Well, okay. So we submitted all the invoices were submitted, and we thought that there might, and they told us there might be a delay in release of payment. There may be a delay, and so
Okay.
you know, but because actually, yeah, we did submit the payment. They did tell us that there might be a delay, and the payment was suspended for a little bit because of the shutdown. But they did complete all payments.
we're talking years. I mean, this is like some of the bills were like 2022. I mean, I'm trying to figure out why it took 3 years for them to process this thing.
Now, I think there may have been a couple of older ones, but most of them were within the last year. And it was a discussion that we were having about and it had to do with the NPDES permit. I think that started last year.
Okay. Well,
I'll send you a sheet with all the invoicing.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chair Watts, did you have other questions about the budget?
I do. I guess, yeah, so if we could clear up that, because I think, we were paying for things while that was happening, right? So I'm trying to
Correct.
figure where, so, you know, how are we paying for it? Because this is millions of dollars that the Navy's owed EDC. I think the total reimbursement I saw was almost $2 or $3 million that hadn't been paid.
Mhm.
So I'm just, trying to figure out how are we covering those things?
I don't think. Well, we'll check. I don't think it was that much. I thought it was the amount that you see reflected on the sheet.
No,
There.
no, it was millions, Mark. It was like from 3 years, like 3 years of bills. Um,
So I think, Chair, there were, what we did is we went back and did more of a cost accounting exercise and, applied the cost, not just of operating and maintaining the pumps and some of the reporting that goes along with that, but also looked at the cost that we were paying out as we operated under the terms of the settlement while we were waiting for the NPDES permit to get issued. So when you fully load those costs in, then we were upside down. And how were we paying for that? We were paying from revenues that we gathered from rent, from land, because that really is our only revenue sources are either distribution of water or rent from land. That's really it. So we were robbing from our revenue from the land rent in order to pay our bills.
okay, that didn't affect other operations though, right? We were okay with, I just wanted to ensure that we weren't, like you said, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and then someone's getting kind of, turned upside down because of that.
It's a very fair question.
So I think the chart that I have here has like from March 2023, all the way up to March 2025. And each bill ran about $40,000. And the two longest one was a 2-year delay and a 23-month delay. So I just wanted to make sure we're all clear, because at some point, I think if that's not clear, we should send a letter to the Navy, inquiring as to what's the status.
We will follow up with the documentation for you that shows that it was paid,
Thank you, Chair.
that they're current. One of the other, a couple of other things that I wanted to bring to the, admin's forefront is, the fact that the board released all of the lands that we had available. We held nothing back. Everything was available for application. And the board made the decision to get rent appraisals for diversified land, for pasture land, common area maintenance on Oahu, as well as Kauai. Between releasing the lands, the appraisals, forming a permitted interaction group in order to vet all of the applications, yesterday that resulted in 232 acres being licensed at about $360,000 of new revenue coming in. And right now we are working with applicants on licenses, and we should have another $522,000 worth of licenses to come to the board for approval. So that in and of itself is going to be over $880,000 of new rent, simply because we released all of the land, we had market appraisals done, and the board worked very, very hard to vet the licensees to put people on the land. But we are very quickly running out of land on Oahu. One of the other things I wanted to share, just from I think of administration being kind of how we operate internally. And we have the Yardi property management system that we've been working on, the reconciliation, in order to load all of the information into the system. And the week of November 3rd was rapid implementation by Yardi. So Yardi was on site for 4 days while we loaded and tested into the system. And the system is tested, it's operating, and we will be generating invoices. I'm thinking December, is that right, Mark? Out of Yardi?
Yes. So Yardi will generate invoices in December for January billing. So we're going to start billing for the next month. In the past, we were billing for the previous month. So in other words, we would send out an invoice for December, for the month of December, and so we would receive payment at the end of the month or prior. But the typical practice for real estate would be the reverse, right? You pay the rent up front. And so the new system will generate an invoice in December for January. We're also going to, because we still need to invoice for December, we will send out 2 invoices for December. I'm sorry, we will send out an invoice for the month of December also. And as part of that, because of that change, and not to create too much of a burden to the tenants, we're going to give them a little bit longer period of time to pay, instead of, otherwise what it becomes is they have to pay, in the month of December for like 2 months, right? So it might become a hardship. So we're going to allow a longer period of time for them to complete payment for those. But going forward, it will be they will be sent out monthly for the upcoming month.
Okay, so I just have a couple of comments. So, Wendy, circling back to what you had first talked about, relabeling, please do. You and staff will know the best way to label it so it's accurate. And yes, going forward, when there are variances, there needs to be an explanation. Typically, financial reporting, you're going to have a footnote to explain why there's such a big variance. Then that way it'll flag to us, okay, are there any issues that need to be addressed? Some might just be timing issues. But making sure that we are doing our best to adhere to the budget. Yes, because when the financials came over, there was no explanation with it, and it was my request to get some explanations to this committee and then eventually the board. As far as and then one last thing, as far as cadence, uh, uh, typical in a private setting, you have quarterly board meetings and you review financials quarterly. I do understand that state agency meetings happen monthly. With that said, I think it would be appropriate to go over some financials every few months. So if the quarter ends, September, that would be the first quarter of fiscal 26. Let's say it takes about a month, to get through everything. That would be October. So maybe in the November meeting, we can expect to see some kind of financials. You know, uh, quarterly basis is a good way to staying on top of things. So, what Committee Member Watts talked about, the PMRF contract.
Mhm.
That was a whole fiscal year, and if not more, that we lost in the collections. So we need to stay on top of these things. So as they pop up, we understand what's going on. If action needs to be taken, let's take it right away. So with that said, cadence would kind of be, what is that, months 2, 5, 8, and 11 to have some kind of quarterly financials. Does that sound?
It's very reasonable, Chair, especially now that we have the Yardi implemented. It's a lot easier.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So, again, I would say there's no motion to be made, but then making sure we set the cadence just like how we did with the budget reporting.
Mhm. Did
Okay.
you I mean, there's a lot to chew on here in the number 3. And did you want to touch on the contracts? Because there was like a list of active contracts that we have, and on that list, there's 36. And what, I did is annotated and grouped by, yes, there's professional services, but 7 are legal and they're compliant. 7 of them have to do with water. 5 of them have to do with plans and development. 3 have to do with security and 3 have to do with engineering. I think moving forward, the question is, in keeping track and reporting to the ad committee on the contracts, what are you most interested in? Is it going to be the contracts that are ongoing? Is it, contracts under, over $50,000? Because, we may do appraisals, and appraisal might be $10,000. Like, do you want to look at everything? Do you want to look at just, the big ticket numbers, or how would you like to digest this information so that we can present it in the best format?
Okay. For me, and I'll open this up to the committee members after this, but for me, of course, all contracts are important regardless of the dollar amount, showing that we have the ability to perform what we need to be performing. And the biggest reason for this is because we as a board, our committee as well as a full board needs to understand what all it is that is being managed by this agency. And the biggest things are making sure that there's the organization internally to identify milestones, critical items that are needed, and making sure that they're on pace to get completed. So, it is a status report. Okay, we need to know is this progressing according to schedule, according to plan, whatever it is? If there are items, that we're going to hit some roadblocks or we need some further assistance on, we need to know right away, so we can address them. So if there are, if let's say there's I guess best hypothetical I can give is let's say there's a contract, okay, everything's moving along smoothly. Okay, maybe just let us know. And then on the flip side, if there are contracts that we are running into issues or I don't know, any big decisions need to be made to fulfill the contract. If this PMRF one was what had this come up before, we would have known either we're not submitting invoices, NPDES permit is needed before they'll pay, but something that we're gonna see and we know and we can take action right away. So it truly is just that, a status report so we know what's happening. With that, other committee members, you guys have any discussion on this?
No, thank you, Chair. You hit it on the head.
No further comments.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, that would be for both, or all of the schedules that you put together, and we appreciate staff taking the time to do it. It's not only the contracts, but also the legislative appropriations that we need to manage. Yes, we need to make sure we are holding ourselves accountable and showing the confidence that we can accomplish these things.
I don't want to take things off kilter here, but it kind of, the contract list, the project tracker, and item 4 kind of dovetail. So I think it's important to note that on the contracts, Ken is the project manager on 36 projects. We all assist, but he is lead. When you look at all of these contracts, Ken is the lead on these contracts. We have been working to try and hire a contract manager. We have somebody vetted. We're waiting for the HR process to move and okay it so that we can make an offer to have a contract manager. But there's also the project management side on these contracts. It's a pretty heavy load. I want you to be aware of that. That's a lot, because some of these contracts, this is just kind of like, there's everything from the NPDES, water sampling and monitoring to, starting to do the design and planning for the high pressure packaging machine. I mean, there are very large contracts in here. It's not just, who are you contracting with to do an appraisal for $10,000? There's some pretty hefty ones. And when you overlay that with the, list of projects, that are in another spreadsheet that was given, Ken is the lead on 20 of those projects. Lyle is the lead on 10 acquisitions. Mark is the lead, on 6 of those projects. Anella's the lead on 1 of them. And they're projects. It's not a simple, like, a 1-pager. They're pretty complicated. Like for an acquisition, there's, about 10 steps. Everything from, doing the LOI to getting an appraisal done, doing a survey. There might need to be, some site work done. There might be an environmental done. There's many, many steps. We're just operating very, very lean. And so that's kind of the good news, and that's also the bad news. But that's a big reason we had asked for an additional admin in fiscal year 27, and things are tight. They're really tight. And I get that. And, one of our board members is board member Cook, and he's been watching, and he said, where do you guys need help? And, we talked amongst ourselves and said, we really could use another admin just to help with the paper processing.
Okay, Wendy, sorry, not to cut you off, because I totally understand. I just don't want us to jump ahead.
Yep, sorry about that.
Appreciate the feedback, and yes, I do have a day job, and I do understand projects you work on. There are millions of things that I'm doing. So just to complete this discussion on the status report, Yeah, we don't need the littlest things to be reported on. If there is EIS phase one, something major that needs to be completed, okay, we need to know that so we do understand where things are at and making sure, these long lead items are being triggered as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
So just to wrap that up, and sorry, Wendy, let me call the next. I just didn't want to have the discussion um, prior to actually calling the agenda item. So let's continue. Agenda item C4, request for approval to accept grant funding for Ulupono Initiative LLC for a temporary administrative assistant position. Is there any member of the public who would wish to testify on this matter?
There is none, Chair.
Okay, thank you. With that, yes, Director Gady, if you don't mind presenting or having staff present on this item.
We have not we have the capability to accept grants, but we have not really gone out and actively solicited in this way for grant funding. And the way that the process is unfolding, and I think it begets maybe a discussion on, what would be a best management practice or a standard operating procedure going forward in how we work with grants. In some cases, grants are being posted and you apply for them. In other cases, you're just looking for a grantor because you have a need and you have a shortfall, which I certainly agree it should come to the admin committee and then go to the board. But what we did is write up a job description that says these are kind of the things that we would want this person to do. We answer some questions, and the grantor met amongst themselves. There is some paperwork that happens, and then internally what we would do is set up a trust account so that when the grant money comes in, it goes only to that trust account. It is only used for that purpose. It is not mingled with anyone or anything else. And we would use a professional services contract. So we're not going out and finding a person and adding them to the payroll. We would be working with a professional services or a temp company to get an admin in to help basically Mark, Lyle, and Ken.
Okay, any discussion amongst the committee members?
Chair, so I'd note, so hearing the comments earlier about the capacity. So in watching the history of AEC, and now, at least in my time, this is about the third ED. Yes, this time and space, ADC has encumbered substantial amount of actual projects. This was also foreseen by the prior ED who requested the additional positions. So when Executive Director Gady came on, she's fortunate that she came out at the right time, which also added about 5 or 10 positions. I don't recall the exact number, but that was because of the projects coming down the pipeline. Now, I do see capacity is needed, but we should definitely check. Okay, there are two, as Wendy mentioned earlier. You have a property manager, Oahu, that's vacant, plus the contracts manager, and should see how that can help alleviate the capacity for us getting the right people in those positions to help out with Ken Lyle's workload, because I think there could be a lot of shift from there. They're both doing amazing work, but some of that stuff could just be handed off to somebody who either knows contracts and can do the processing, while Ken and Lyle continue like the overall visioning and where do we head next. So if this funding somehow to support maybe capacity at that level, because it's not, the question too is we don't, do we even have a position?
Do we have a position on the org chart? The answer is no. We don't have a position where we could actually put a body. So this would be a professional services. The org chart will show that we have, the property manager for Oahu, the contract manager, and then we also have an accountant that we've been interviewing for over the last year and have not been successful, and one water worker on Kauai. So those are the positions. Sorry. Did you have, did I cut you off? Sorry about that.
Chair, just a couple comments.
Yes.
Just add, I concur, generally with what Wendy said, and of course, what Dane said, it's a lot of projects. It's significant, they're high dollar, and it's, we're very visible these days, ADC, very visible, and so, I think it's important that we, ensure that the staff is right size, the office is right size, so we don't drop the ball or anything. But I do have a small concern that that these kinds of items come to the board. I think, from a management perspective, like the law and the bylaws say the board creates positions or authorizes positions, the legislature creates them. Even if they're not funded by the state, I do believe that the board should have a mechanism to review and approve a position that's created within the office. And even though it's a personal services contract, this person would be functioning essentially as an ADC employee. And so I think there is some oversight responsibility there. So just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, so taking all of this into consideration, the request right now is to basically accept this grant. Okay, but what I'm hearing is we may not have or be able to apply this to a current ADC position. Okay, sorry, I think I might need a little more explanation as far as how, number one, if it's possible to accept this grant, and I would like to with this committee and the board, of course, thank Ulupono, for this, number one, and then I guess we would have to see if we can craft a motion, unless Committee Member Watts, you think it's appropriate for the entire board to take this matter up. We could defer to the next board meeting.
Chair, this is the first time I think we're doing this in ADC. I know other departments like Department of Agriculture, they've done this in the past where they've had
from 1-808-722-6706.
I don't know exactly what the mechanism is to do that. My only concern in this situation for ADC, because it has a board, is that the board does have a responsibility for the staffing components of it. And so, I'm not saying that Director Gady's request for that certain position is wrong or anything, but I think it begs a discussion, on the workload and on what people are working on. And I think this goes back to also, what our future requests to the legislature is going to look like as far as right sizing ADC and making sure ADC is really designed to execute and complete the project that's been given. Thank you. But yeah, ultimately, I think it would be a recommendation from you as chair or this board. I mean, this committee, and then I think to the full board for either with a recommendation to accept, not accept, or change the recommendation.
Okay, so Executive Director Gady, hearing the comments from the committee, can you come back then? I think that's a good idea. We should move this over to the full board and be ready to address the comments that you heard from today. Board responsibility, for supervision of this person, and also, of course, how it might impact, future requests or appropriate staffing levels for the agency. And if there's anything more committee members want you to be prepared to present to the board on, they can share that now. Hearing none, Wendy, are you got a understanding of what to report at the board?
I think so. I'm gonna do a little bit more investigating, to Chair Watts's point. I know the Department of Ag has used a similar process in having, a grantor grant funds to the Department of Ag for a grant writer. And then, after that, or as that grant was wearing, was winding down, the Department of Ag requested a grant writer and the position to be added to the org chart, and then that eventually happened. So there is some precedent somewhere else, but I hate to put you on the spot, Deputy Director Wicker, but is there any precedence in another attached agency or department that I should maybe inquire of? And then are you thinking that it should just, am I making a recommendation for a process to follow? Or what format would you like this to take?
I have to get back to it to think that if there's an example on which department we could build a template off of.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, Wendy will go investigate that and report to the board at the next meeting. With that, moving on to agenda item C5, request that the administration committee formally review the corporation's organizational chart so the committee can review, advise, and make a formal recommendation to Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, Deputy Director Wicker, for DBED Director Tokioka's approval. Request the administration committee consider updating the senior executive assistant job title to deputy. Is there any member of the public who would wish to testify on this agenda item?
There is none.
Okay. With that, does staff have any presentation on this?
We do not, Chair.
Okay, I will open it up to committee members for discussion.
Sure.
Yes.
Just I in support of this. I think the current title for the current incumbent of this position as senior executive assistant, this is kind of not funny, but it's not, doesn't sit well. I think for the realities of why the position was created, and secondly, for I think the level of responsibility expected of this person and what this person actually does do, including his ex officio work sitting as a member of the Board of Agriculture in the DBED director's absence. And so when this position was created, it was really created because there was a concern about continuity and all that with the previous organization. And so they created this position, and I'm not sure exactly why it's called a senior executive assistant, because really it's a deputy director. And even if you look at the DBED's current org charts, that's where the position sits, like a deputy director. And so I think it's important to, I think, give him the title that reflects the level of responsibility, both internally and externally. And this position actually also, in the case of the previous executive director passing, when the office of the ED is vacant, this person is the acting ED. So, I think it's not something I think we're reaching for. It's something that should already be. But Um, anyway, that's my thoughts. So thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Shad, I did put deputy executive director as a recommendation, but whatever you folks think, I don't know what else we'll call it, deputy director or whatever. So thank you.
Okay, and you know, from my understanding, there is a process to get you know, positions renamed or changing the organizational chart.
Mhm.
Okay, so Wendy, do you have anything to share on that?
There definitely is kind of a 5-step process in terms of updating the organizational chart within DBED because I had inquired, you know, how that would work if someone on the board ever wanted to do it. The first is to answer questions. The first question being, are you abolishing, does this abolish, create, or change the organizational structure of the division? The second is, does it cause a change to classification or policies that would affect DHERD? The third is it cost neutral? Because if it's not, it may require the governor's approval through B&F. And the fourth, is there a variance of over 20%? And if it is a variance of 20%, that requires governor's approval. And then you typically form, and I don't even know what typically is, but the second step is you form a task group to facilitate the org change. The third step is the program initiates the change to be submitted to the director of DBED. The fourth is we provide copies of an approved request that has gone through B&F and DHERD. And the fifth step is the department sends a formal assessment, assessment. So those are kind of the processes. And I think it would require looking within the state to see if there is an equivalent title that already exists with a position description, because I would agree the position description for the senior executive assistant does not do justice to the work that's being performed in that role.
Okay, so at this point, you know, to address you know, committee member Watts, are do you need to do more work first before we could you know, put forward either a motion or a, you know, direction to make this change? And then also, you know, the organizational chart in general, because I take it what's been included in this board packet is the proposed org chart. I'm just trying to check on what the proper procedure is right now.
I think there is some more work that needs to be done on, you know, my part in terms of looking at equivalent position descriptions and to see if the org chart that is put in and there, it's labeled Exhibit A. And yes, this actually is, you know, kind of a draft, but it's certainly up for discussion. And I know that the DBED org chart that says it's dated July 24th, 23, and in the lower right-hand corner, July 31st, 25, doesn't not include the position for the commodity coordinator. But we are more than open for suggestions on how to possibly, you know, realign the org chart to be more reflective of what the board has in mind for the position and its functioning.
Okay, committee members, do you have any discussion on the proposed org chart itself right now? I know we just got it for this meeting.
No, I would just add that I would look at each county as its own ecosystem. And so if I had to run that ecosystem, kind of like a structure of a business, you're going to need a property manager if you're going through development of projects, a contract manager, then the infrastructure and facilities, if it's the water system, the infrastructure may fall in property management. But then that would start to show that FPIN. Sorry, I'm kind of looking at it sideways. That should probably be on the same line as the executive assistant, project manager. It just seems like I would have on that line the different branches that oversee like entire project. Because then it's clear, like, okay, if I'm looking at what do I need to operate Oahu, what do I need to operate Kauai, what do I need to operate Hawaii Island, then restructure it that way. It's kind of hard. It's kind of just hodgepodge right now.
Okay. Any other comments right now?
Chair, one. I just would add, yeah, I agree with Deputy Director Wicker. But I think for me, more, what really caught my attention was the change from the current org chart that's on the books. And you know, moving the senior executive assistant to this level kind of concerned me, because then now this really puts this person in a non-deputy director position. So it's kind of looked like to me a little bit of a demotion, or because this person is the number two. This person does exert some level of authority in the absence of me. And if you look at every other agency or even the Department of Business Economic Development's actual org chart, you know, the director, the deputy, the secretary, they're all in the same line. They're not consistent with the regular staff. I had some concerns there. Thank you.
Okay, so for each of these items, then the org chart in general, as well as the renaming of the position. You know, Wendy, you've heard the comments at this meeting, so if you can go work on those and get something back out to the committee
Mhm.
to look at, and of course, if there's any further comments or you know, feedback off of your revisions, then we'll keep working through that process.
Can do, Chair.
Okay, and last item on our agenda, informational items. There are none. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.